Hello and welcome to Happy Cells and Souls. My name is Julie Powers and I'm a licensed Zumba instructor and a business partner with the Juice Plus Company. My missions in life are to help people understand that life is better when they're dancing through it and to inspire healthy living around the world. But my expanded mission is to create better health at the cellular level and more joy at the cellular level, because we only get one body while we're here, so we need to take care of it. And we're supposed to be joyful while we're here and spread light and love in the world. And that leads me to these conversations that I try to capture for people like you who happen to have found this video. And I think that we all have stories to share and we can learn from everyone. Doesn't matter if we share the same beliefs in politics, in religion, in anything. If we keep our minds and hearts open, we can learn from everyone. And today we get to learn from my new friend, Jim Readey. And I met Jim because we were both taking an online course together, and I saw his story about how he was formerly an attorney. And I found out that not only was he an attorney, but he actually clerked for Justice David Souter when that man was on the New Hampshire Supreme Court. So Jim, you practiced law all through the 80s and 90s, but yet now you have been a certified yoga instructor, a Thai massage therapist. You do, mindful improv with comedy and drama. And you do all kinds of really cool things virtually and in person in parks there in the Concord, New Hampshire area. And I just love this whole idea of how you left this law practice and you moved into something vastly different from arguing for a living into helping people really just get centered. And I'd love for you to tell your story.
Well, thank you, Julie. You want me to tell my story? I am really a pathetic storyteller. Um, as a lawyer, I think I got used to responding to direct questions, specific questions, the way my brain works. So, I'm old. I've got a long story, and I
You're
know we
not
only have.
that old. I think we're very close to the same age.
Come
So,
on.
mm.
You look like you're 41.
See, I knew that I really connected with you whenever I saw you. No, I'm 55. Um,
55.
so
I am 64.
we're
So
close in age. See, we're
okay,
close
well,
in age.
percentage-wise, maybe. Still, we both have long stories, and so where to start? Where to start?
Well, I'd love to know why you left your law practice. Like what was the straw that broke the camel's back and made you jump from that into something like yoga and mindful practices and breathing and helping people get centered, because they feel so vastly different to me.
I got sick of it, literally and figuratively. One of the issues that I was having for my 10 years or so in the practice was stiff neck, stiff shoulder, pain that sometimes would shift from this side to this side. And I used to think it was because we would be carrying all these heavy briefcases, cases full of lawyerly briefs. And I didn't realize at the time how much tension, stress was playing a role in that. I had injured myself during law school, and the injury just never went away. So it hung around for 8 years, 10 years. Um, and then it wasn't until I started doing yoga while I was still a lawyer. It was in the last, let's say, 6 months of being a lawyer that I started doing yoga, that I started to understand what the mind-body connection were about.
Right.
So, I guess one of the straws that broke my camel's back was it was time for me to move on from the law firm I was working at. The work that they were doing and what I wanted to do just weren't jiving. I had gone there because I wanted to do litigation, and it was a small boutique firm. I won't get way into that, but the work that I had wanted to do just wasn't showing up, so I was kind of forced to do other things that weren't my cup of tea. And one of the partners said, "Hey, take your time, take 6 months if you need it. We'll also pay for a course, not a course, but some sessions with a woman whose specialty was helping lawyers move from one area to another area within the law, or in some cases to leave the law if
Oh,
they're not
wow.
happy." Yeah, so they said we'll pay for that. Take your time. And So I started going to see that woman every week and started thinking about what I wanted to do. One of the partners at the firm said, "Hey, we've got this lead that we think you'd be really good for this position. It's an administrative law judge, and be happy to give you a recommendation." And so I started working on my resume, and I just couldn't do it. I just started feeling like I was walking through mud.
Mm.
Energetically, I was in decent physical shape, but just physically, I couldn't get myself to pick up the pen, and I didn't have a computer in those days. This was a long time ago. This was early 90s. So did not own a computer during my legal days. But in any case, I couldn't do it. And I started checking in, and I was doing this work, Myers-Briggs tests and other things with this woman, and reading a book called Running from the Law, which really means like, how do you leave the law if you've got so much invested in it? So this one thing led to another, and I made this decision. I deserve to be happy in my life. I'm not feeling like there's anything right here in this profession for me right now that's going to support that. So I was given permission by this woman and by the book she was giving me to dream, to ask myself, what would be something fun to do? I had never asked that question of myself, and no one had ever asked me that since I was an adult.
Right.
In terms of work.
That is something that a lot of people lose. We're not allowed to dream as adults. We're only allowed to dream as children, and then our dreams are pretty much squashed because it's not realistic.
Yeah, not a dependable career.
Right.
You need something that you can really depend on, and you want to
Right.
raise a family and buy a house and all that stuff. Yeah, so I was feeling the pressure to do that for most of my early adult life, and then at some point, a seed was planted, and I started asking a new question, and I've been asking it ever since. So that was 1992. So however, it's 30 years.
Right.
New question for the last 30 years. What brings me joy? Or what is my soul asking for?
Right. Right. And so you're able to help other people kind of do the same thing through what you're teaching, right? And letting them sort of reconnect with what they're supposed to be doing, even if it's something as simple as you and I did a practice where you kind of helped me breathe and focus without focusing on certain parts of my body, and just really trying to let go of some of the things that are kind of keeping me tense. And so I think that probably you do a lot of those one-on-one processes with people. You also do group activities with yoga and with the mindful improv. And so can you pick one of the areas that you enjoy the most and tell us why that brings you joy, since you've been asking yourself?
Yeah, let me see if I can get to that. I'm going to step back, and something you had said about what I do when I help people. When I was clerking for David Souter, you mentioned that in my intro bio, he gave us photographs of the court, the five judges, justices, and he signed the framed copy that he gave me. And what it said was, to Jim Readey, a clerk who helps a judge stay clear on the fundamentals.
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, I guess I do that. I really wasn't sure where he came up with that. It was just, I did what I do. Mm-hmm. But as I've been observing myself for the 30 years or so since then, I start to notice, I tend to do that no matter what it is I'm working with, whether it's yoga or being a lawyer or doing improv comedy. And what you just referred to in our time together, getting clear on fundamentals like breathing. There's really not much more fundamental to our life than breathing.
Right. It's very, very important.
Yeah. Quick Zen story. The student says to the Zen master, breathing, breathing, breathing. You're always hounding us about breathing. What is so important about breathing? And so as the story goes, the Zen master grabbed him by the top of the head, plunged his head into a trough of water and held it there. And held it there a little longer. And of course the student is... Finally he brings the student up. And the Zen master says, now, do you understand why breathing is so important? And at first I didn't like that story. Like a lot of Zen stories, I'm not sure I get that. The violence in that, and almost killed the guy. Right. But now, get it. Not just it's important to take in oxygen and expel the CO2, but how we breathe, the quality of the breathing. If it's slow exhalations, we tend to bring a sense of relaxation. The parasympathetic nervous system gets triggered, which is our relaxation response.
Right. And like there's something about turning off that vagus nerve, right? And or something that gets kind of clicked into place when you're doing the breathing properly.
Yeah, I can't remember how the vagus nerve is related to the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems, but I know that those are involved in what most people know as flight or fight. So
Right.
turning off the flight or fight so that we can go into the relaxed parasympathetic nervous response. And that's when we start to heal. When we're in sympathetic nervous system response, when we're in flight or fight, what happens is that the immune system gets shut down because it's not as important as running away or fighting in that moment. So the energy needs to be directed to these other things. So we want those things to be turned back on. The nervous system, we want that to be relaxed and blooming, so to speak, and the immune system. Yeah. So I know I still have this other question sort of like pinned right there in my head that you said, what gives you joy and why, of all the things. If you had something else, go ahead and ask it. It looked like.
No. It's just, whenever you're teaching people, what is it about that? Is it more of the breathing exercises? Is it more of the improv? Is it more of the yoga? What do you find the most joy in, or is it the same thing in all of them, helping people stay with the fundamentals? And that really is what brings you joy, because you've been doing that throughout your law practice and throughout yoga and mindful breathing and probably massage and everything else that you do. It's very much about the fundamentals. And so what brings you joy, Jim?
Yeah, all right. So I'm going to get right down to the elemental. I'm not going to hold back. From my now decades of practice, from reading, from experiencing meditative states, my understanding is that you and I, everyone we know, we are uncaused joy itself. Have you heard that concept before?
Have not. I've heard that we are meant to be joyful.
We are already joyful. This is the conclusion of sages throughout millennia. Is that when we meditate deeply enough, what Buddha probably discovered sitting under the tree when he was meditating, is when we're in the course that we just took, they were using the language, the writing course. They were talking about communing with Source. And what I interpret that to mean from my own experiences is when we meditate deeply enough, or when we relax our ego system deeply enough, we can, I'll own it, I can feel the connection that I have with all things. Now, it doesn't last for hours and hours or all day. Sometimes it does, but it's the ego turns back on, and then I'm able to relax the ego, and then it turns back on. So when I'm able to do that and feel the connection with all that is, basically I'm remembering myself as Source, as God. And my understanding of Source and God and universe is that it is total equanimity. It is uncaused joy. It doesn't need something to trigger the joy. It's not emotional joy. That's on the surface, like happiness and sadness. Those are emotions. But underneath is this current of joy that's always here, so that when we can tap into it, even when we're angry, we can feel that sense of calm, serenity, joy that's always here. So go ahead. It looks like you've got something.
I was just gonna say, so like for people from all different backgrounds, because I want this to make sense to people from all different directions.
Yeah.
So if it says be still and know that I am God, then that means that we need to quiet our minds so that we can hear God talking to us. And so for some people, their picture of God is this, and for other people, the picture of God is this, but it's still that same practice of be still and allow God to come into you so that you have that connection and you find the joy within, because a lot of people are looking for the next thing to bring them joy. Like I have to get this and then I'll be happy. I have to take care of that and then I'll be happy. I have to have this particular relationship and then I'll be happy. But if we don't find that joy within us because of what we have been given to our own bodies and our own selves, then we're never going to have it. Am I putting that into the right words, or am I making up stuff?
No, I would say like not, I would agree with 95% of
Okay.
that. But I guess the 5% that I would just want to hone a little bit is that, that God, if you want to use the language of God or source or whatever universal power, a great white spirit, it is always here. Our true nature is godliness. And it's always here. We forget, we pinch off from it. This is my understanding again. And so it's not like we have to cultivate it. We just need to be here, be still.
Mm-hmm.
And in the words of Ram Dass in his book title, be here now. And we remember that we always were we've been seeking. So the joy is always here. And that creates a whole different way to practice. Instead of trying to get somewhere, like you were just illustrating, I need to do this. Sometimes people who are going on the spiritual path feel like, I need to take one more workshop. I need to get this certification. I need to do this. I need to do that. And they are egoing themselves right out of where they really want to be. If they just relax and be here now, then they'll experience the very thing that they think that they're chasing. And it's not, they don't need to chase it. It's right here.
Right.
It's a switch of the mind. It's very challenging for the ego mind that's used to thinking the way that you described it. Is if I get this next thing, if I buy this new toy, I'm going to be happier. If I get that promotion, I'm going to be happier.
Right.
But it doesn't work that way. And if people are honest, they really look at when they get that thing, the joy lasts for a little bit. And it's really kind of an emotional happiness. It's not the undercurrent of joy that we're talking about, the uncaused joy, which is our true nature. So those of us who are on a spiritual path, we are really trying to drop into that place, rediscover where we are. Because not only is it joyful, but there's also an access, there's access to source wisdom, unbounded wisdom. Like when people have insights or intuition shows up, they're starting to relax deeply enough so that they can hear that still voice of intuition or God or source.
So, okay, we have 1 minute because it always goes by way too quickly. What would you say about if somebody wanted to have, well, I know everybody's so different. They would have to choose what would make sense for them. But from the things that you offer, what is a good introduction for them? Is it breathing? Is it a meditation practice that you can help them with to understand how to do that? Is it one of the courses?
Whatever lights them up. Because it's all connected as far as I'm concerned. I'm teaching the same thing using all of these different tools.
Right.
But it's always about helping people come back to themselves. And when we come back to ourselves, it's the best way to improvise is to be present, be here now, to listen to our own intuition and then move from there spontaneously.
Right.
And that's and I teach breathing in meditation. I teach breathing in improv. I teach breathing in yoga. So you get the basics, the fundamentals, which I'm so good at teaching, apparently.
You're so good at that, and it brings joy.
You get it in whatever lights you up. That's a good place to start.
Well, I always tell people that the very best form of exercise is the one that they will do.
That's a good one.
You tell me that, swimming and running are the very best exercises, and I'd be like, well, I'm doomed because I'm not going to do those.
And if you start exercising, you start breathing.
Right. And so you find what it is that you will do that will help you take those long inhalations, and relax into it and really just be more present, because I think we're always rushing so much from here to there and the next moment and thinking about what's next that we don't just live in the present.
Yeah.
And
for those people who are scared that we're trying to get them to slow down and they won't be able to accomplish the things that they know they have to do, it's okay to rush, but you can rush in a relaxed way. You can move really fast.
Right.
Just breathe more slowly. It works.
From what I understand, there's quite a bit of research about taking that time for rest. Just like if you work out really hard, you have to have rest periods for your muscles to regenerate and rebuild. You have to have time for your brain to file all the things from the day while you sleep. So you have to have those moments of separation from the busyness, right? And
And why I'm doing that is because you can relax even while you're in action. While you're doing your Zumba, Michael Jordan is flying through the air. He's going to dunk it. He's got to be relaxed too. He's got to be in a flow
right,
to operate at that optimal level that he operated on.
right. So
Michael Jordan, for you young kids, was a good basketball player back in the
he was
90s.
he was the greatest of all times, right? Well, Jim, is there any, we're over time already because it goes by so fast. Is there any last thing that you would like to say to anyone that happens to see this video? The 5 people, the 50 people, the 500 people that might see this.
Yeah, follow your bliss. Just listen to what lights you up and follow that. It'll probably lead you where you want to be.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.